I want to welcome our next guest, Tigard Police Chief Kathy McAlpine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me. Appreciate it.
What do you think when you watch that Maywalking video and you've got people, what was the range there? Was like 15 to 100 officers? What's your reaction to that?
In some ways you want to chuckle and laugh because it is so far out there.
But it's
right?
also not so funny.
But it's not, because I too have been out in the community doing that outreach, and I have heard the same projections from 25 to a very straight-faced 100 officers. And so, which is great that the community feels safe and they think that we're out there. And for all those criminals out there, I hope you still think there's 100 officers out there, but that's not the reality. At least 40% of the time, we're really only at 3 officers or 4, and as you alluded to, when there's 2 major incidents, sometimes we cannot control both scenes at the same time, and that becomes a huge challenge.
It's not safe to do so, right?
No, it's not, because you need your backup when those priorities. You should not go head first, but sometimes those life safety issues require us to, and that's not a sustainable method for doing that.
I also was a little concerned as I did a ride along. I had Officer Wakeham on last year, and she asked me to go on a ride along, and I agreed to do that, and I did. And I was struck by how much overtime the officers are working that in patrol who maybe don't necessarily want to be working that much overtime. You have any comment there? Sure.
I mean, officer wellness is huge. That's gotten national attention. And when you talk about the volume of officers committing suicides at a high rate is astronomical, but there's plenty of studies there that talk about the wellness, the ability to decompress, not only on a day off but also in between calls. And again, fortunately, we've been able to fill the overtime by those who volunteer. When you get to a mandatory, that's when you really are pushing the limits. And it's far more healthier for our officers to be able to have their proper days off, the proper time in between calls. Because you can imagine, if you went to a very traumatic incident, maybe a child was injured or you lost a loved one, and we cannot have the time we've just taken in all that emotion, we've controlled the scene, and now I have to go right here to a burglary, and okay, it's not a life safety issue, but it's very, very important to that homeowner who feels violated, and the officer may not be as empathetic or may just be trying to get the information. And so
they're tired at the
I
noticed they were tired at the end of the shift. So when I did my ride along, one of the officers, one of the 3 on shift, had started 4 hours early, so I was supposed to start in the morning, and she'd already been on duty since 3 in the morning, coming in early, and then one of the other officers that was on was staying late, and it just struck me as concerning.
You can be concerned about fatigue and officer safety, and just, as you know, you pace yourself then, and so maybe you're just going to go ahead and wait for the next call, as opposed to now I want to be out there a little bit more and see what I can see out there. So yeah, it definitely nothing becomes it's not a good thing, and it's not sustainable. For the community out there that's listening, I would tell you I'm ringing the bell. Okay, I'm sending the warning signal.
What do you mean by that? Be clear.
Very clear, yes. I'm telling you that there's an erosion of service, that there is a concern, and I'm trying to make a wake-up call. So not today or tomorrow, you're not going to see the city fall apart or anything like that, but erosion, as you can imagine, if not addressed, it just slowly creeps out there.
And we've been eroding for a long time.
That is correct. And when we're adding 1,200 more calls for service with actually fewer officers, and we don't get those additional officers from a community, it may take months to a year, but then all of a sudden you're going to wake up and go, how did Tigard get this way? For me,
I would argue we're already kind of there.
Yes.
I know it's a judgment call, but
right. Well, and I'm going mostly by the perception of the community when saying, I feel safe, which is great, or I think there's a lot of officers, so they may not be impacted yet. But for those folks, I'm telling you there's a lot going on that our officers are responding to. And without the additional support, you're also, not only the burnout, but our ability to retain, because everybody around us is hiring
You just
law
lost
enforcement
an
officer.
officer, right?
I
You've lost
did.
another officer
Yes.
to another jurisdiction.
That is correct, and we have a couple others looking. So the officers know that the community supports them, but they also want to see that in getting additional bodies. So that support needs to, not a thank you always, which is greatly appreciated, and keep that up, but also the support, and we recognize you're overworked, and we're going to get the necessary bodies that you need.
What's it cost us from your kind of perspective when we lose an officer, both financially and then operationally? What is the impact?
Well, it can take 18 to 24 months to from the time somebody applies to all of the background, onboarding, training, getting the equipment. There's probably like a $350,000, and no, that's not what officers get paid. So
No, but
we wish
between the training, the commitment financially
Exactly.
to get them to where they can be
Right.
on the road by themselves.
Right.
That's that number.
And when you're losing more senior officers, the 5 to 7 years on, there's a value of that where they're very seasoned. They need very little supervision. If you're always onboarding new officers, you're always in that green area and slower, and they've got to learn some things. And so the balance of experienced officers to those that you're the newer ones is also important.
I always worry about, and I see this in a variety of industries, and I think, Amazon pays people to quit, and part of why they do that, and it really applies here too, is that you end up in a situation where the only people that stay are the people that didn't have options to go elsewhere, and that's not really the police agency that I want to aspire the city of Tigard to be.
No, and again, I would want to assure everybody that there are plenty of very dedicated officers that desire. They want to serve and protect in Tigard, and they'll stay here.
But they
they're
want to feel
just
support.
asking.
They want to feel
Absolutely.
supported.
They just want the other resources. They want to know that they have a partner to back them up, but they also want to know that, hey, I can follow up on this investigation, or I can write a proper report and know that somebody else is covering my district.
So I know you were out of town for the State of the City last year, but I shared a dumb criminal story. I don't know if you heard about that from my time when I was a reserve officer.
I did.
You spent lots of years in patrol and in detectives, right?
33 years.
Yeah, so tell us your best, but try to be brief. It doesn't have to be if it's super entertaining.
Right.
But
No pressure there.
Yeah, no pressure there.
Okay.
Tell us a great dumb criminal story from your time.
Okay, I'm gonna share this one because it is the most impactful. So when you think about, I can tell it again 33 years later, it left its impression. So in Tacoma, East Side, lot of shootings, a lot of gang activity. But my partner and I, we were called to just a noisy party, parking problem. No problem. We're just
So
rolling.
that's how it came in.
That's how it came in.
Noisy party parking problem.
Yes.
Okay.
And as we're
Seems
still,
kind of benign.
it is, but as we're driving, then we hear that now it's kind of escalated, and the homeowner's out in front yard, and now we're hearing shots fired.
Oh, getting serious quick.
It is, and so we're responding a little quicker now. We get there, the neighbors say, yeah, the guy in that house, he just shot some fire, shot his gun up in the air. Okay, and again, it's just my partner and I. So we go, knock on the door, fatal funnel, so we're kind of beside the porch.
Hold on, you got to translate fatal funnel.
Okay, in
for
the door.
masses. I know what you're meaning, but yeah, you
in
don't want to
the door,
stand in
you don't
front
want
of
to
the
stand in
doorway.
front of the door.
Yeah.
And so we're standing on the sides, and he opens the door, and he goes like this to the side. It's the side I'm on. I can see that there is a pouch, something of that nature. So I tell my partner, he may be reaching for a gun. He sees us, tries to back out into the house. We obviously don't want him to shut the door on us, so we tackle him. We get him under control.
You do the usual, tackle him, take him down.
But the concerning part was when the dust settled, we find out that it is a mini mag light, a black mini mag light. And what he had done was he had gone out. He was frustrated with this other party, people parking in front of his house. So his way of handling the situation was to take this mini mag light, so the backside looked like the barrel of a gun, and he had a CD of gun noises, gunshots. So he played the CD, and he pointed this at people.
So he was doing some theater.
He was, and the adrenaline was so, I mean, the pucker factor.
You guys almost took him out, probably, right?
Yes, and so needless to say, I was not happy with him, and I made him go get evaluated at a hospital, even though I know, he wasn't. But you were going to get evaluated by a doctor because of your sheer stupidity on how you handled this. And the fact that
it's one thing to do that when you're like at the beginning when you're trying to intimidate your neighbors, right? But it's another thing to be putting your hand down by your waist while a couple of Tacoma police officers are standing there.
Yeah, so
different
you know,
scenario.
just again, the sheer stupidity of what this could have, the outcome could have been, just any slightly different variables. And so as a young officer at that time, I was just, the adrenaline, the reality when the dust settled of how close we came to possibly shooting this guy over nothing was completely ludicrous to me.
Chief, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come chat with me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleasure's all mine.
Good to see you.